Welcome to Boardcast, Questions Answered, Challenges Explored, the podcast where questions lead the way and conversations connect school leaders to real-world solutions.
In each episode, we'll dive into the issues shaping Arkansas schools today, answering the questions that matter most to board members and administrators. With expert guests and meaningful discussions, we provide a snapshot of challenges, best practices, and strategies to help you lead with confidence. Let's explore today's challenges and uncover tomorrow's answers together.
Welcome back to another episode of ASBA Boardcast. We're so excited to be bringing you our second episode, and this time we have special guests joining us. We have Jason Jones, a board member at Yellville-Summit, and also a regional director for ASBA out of Region 2. We have Adam Bailey from Bearden School District. He's a board member there and has been for several years. And we appreciate both of their insights and the perspectives they were able to share about the role of a board member. So this conversation explores that multifaceted role, addresses common misconceptions, and the importance of community involvement. Adam and Jason discuss how board members can effectively connect with the community, shape educational policies, and ensure that the best interests of students are upheld. They emphasize the need for the actual functions of school boards and the significance of that collaboration between board members and the community. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started.
Welcome back to our second podcast.
We're here. That's right. Well, and I think just jumping into one of the reasons we're doing this is because this has been requested. I guess, Shannon, was it last year during regional meetings?
Yes.
That
it was suggested at a couple of regional meetings last year.
Oh, like just about every one, wasn't it? That they struggled with this role of the real role of a board member and what the public perception is. So we appreciate you doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Not a problem.
Yep, no problem.
So we'll jump in and we can start with you, Jason, on the first question. So how would you define the role of a school board member?
The basic role of a school board member is, of course, to hire and fire the superintendent, and then approve or create school policy, board policy, student policy, in conjunction with the superintendent and, of course, the building principals and the PPC. Beyond that, I see it as more of guidance, because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's our main role. That's what we're allowed to do. But we also can kind of guide and steer where we think, what direction we want our school to go in as well.
Yes, I definitely agree. You guys are helping to steer the ship in a lot of ways. What your role would be. Adam, how would you define the role of a school board member?
So I agree with everything Jason said. I think you hit it. I hit the nail on the head there, with us setting policy, hiring the superintendent, hopefully not firing one, but hiring the superintendent and having a successful school district. And I think that, as everything you said kind of encompassed into one thing maybe, is that it's our responsibility to ensure that the best interests of the students and the school district are upheld, right? And so sometimes that comes through feedback loops where we get feedback from the people who elected us, right? The public.
A lot of times the public does not see it the same way of what your actual legal role is as a board member. So what does the public typically believe a board member does in your experience?
They think we run the school. The short easy answer is they think that they can call us about whatever may be. The three words I hate to hear the most are, well, I heard, and then it typically goes from there. Usually they're upset with a coach or a specific program, and they want something done right now. And those sorts of calls and conversations are the long, because I've been on the board now at Yellville for going on 12 years. And every time you have one of those conversations, in the beginning, it's like, I don't know what to do. But now they get a little easier. It's like, well, have you talked to anybody? Because I'm not going to pick up that flag and carry it for you if you haven't had a conversation with anybody but me, because that's not really my job to get, and I hate to use the word not my job. I mean, legally, it's not to get in the weeds and start talking to teachers or coaches or principals or anything like that. So, yeah.
Jason, I loved the story that you told at regional meeting about your mom.
Yeah. So the very first person that called me, my mother, I have a sister that my parents used to be in foster care. We used to do foster care, and they adopted a girl out of foster care that was the same age as one of my children. And so she was still in high school long after I was gone. And to be fair, it was her fault. Whatever was going on was my sister's fault. But my mother called me and wanted something done about the teacher allowing her to do that. And I said, well, Mom, have you talked to the teacher? No, I haven't. I said, well, have you talked to the principal? Have you talked to David? No. I said, well, have you talked to the superintendent? No. Well, then, Mom, I can't help you. There's not a thing I can do if you haven't talked to anybody but me. So, and as you know, there's a reason for that, because if it comes right down to it and there's a problem, a disciplinary problem with a student or a staff member, ultimately, we're probably going to hear that at some point, and we're supposed to be unbiased and not have any prior knowledge of any of that stuff.
That's right. I love that story. It kind of proves how widespread the misconception is of what a board member's role is and what they're allowed to do. So, kind of to combine the first two questions, do you see any alignment between public perception and what the actual responsibilities of a board member are?
Yes, I do. Like I said before, we can sort of guide and steer. And so if I hear from multiple people, that there's some sort of concern, I'll raise that to the superintendent, or I might even pick up a phone and call one of my other board members and say, hey, have you heard anything about such and such? And it's either a yes or a no. But I'll call the central office and be like, hey, I've heard from 5 or 6 people that we may have a problem with XYZ up there. You might want to look into it. And that's typically as far in the weeds as I'll go on that, just because, again, and Lucas cautioned us all, you don't want to do anything that could potentially put yourself or your district in a legal bind by overstepping your bounds. And I think the more I talk to people locally and explain those kind of things to them, the more they understand that, yeah, I might be able to give Wes a heads up or something, but I don't need to be involved in that, because if it does come down to a hearing, I'm out. I have to recuse myself, because I'm not going to get in trouble for any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great that you're trying to spread the word of what you actually do and help others understand, because the more they understand, like you said, then the more you would have to fight those misconceptions.
One thing I do enjoy, though, and it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. I'll have people approach me, like an old veteran approach me kind of this time last year, I think it was, wanting to know how him and his other veteran buddies could get involved at the school with mentoring kids and stuff like that. And, and I tried to track that down for them, because that's something I do think that we can get involved in as far as the community goes, giving them resources and try and get people that are interested in supporting the school from the community, kind of get them meshed up with who they need to be talking to kind of get those things off the ground and to participate, so that they feel like that, even though that they're older and they don't have any kids or necessarily even grandkids in the district anymore, they still feel like it's their school, because they get to participate in helping out and mentoring the kids that attend the district. So that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy doing, and I like getting involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason, I think that's a great point. Often as school board members, we get to be that connection, right? That when people don't know who to contact at the school district or don't know where to go with not just a complaint, but often the good things, we get to play that role. Something I've gotten to do with our local community college, where our students get CTE hours, and also employers, here in our school district. We've developed a curriculum that helps align students for success even after high school. And so getting to play that connector role, and had I not had the positions that I have from my employer, and then the connections that I have with the school board, we wouldn't have been able to set that up and therefore set our students up for success, not only in high school, but beyond. So I think that's one of the rewarding side items of being on the school board, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fun stuff.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. I love that word you both used, connector. That could be an alternate title for you at times, probably, is making connections between the community and the district, being able to communicate community's needs to your district, but also from the district back to the community on what you all are trying to actually accomplish. Adam, did you have anything else to share about what the public typically believes a board member does in your area?
Sure. And Tammy's heard me tell this story, but our job as board members is always and most importantly to hire the head football coach, right? So at least that's what some of our communities seem to believe. And so I told a story at our regional meeting on a panel similar to this, where I was doing some work on my off time. I was bush hogging a field, and it was a hot summer day and not exactly the most fun activity to be doing. But across my pasture, I see a truck approaching. I don't recognize the truck. I don't know who would be coming to join me in helping this work that nobody really wants to be doing. But two gentlemen who I like both of these gentlemen. They're fantastic pillars of our community, but they decided to join me that day in the field and stop me from my work to talk to me about who we should hire as our next head football coach. We had a vacancy at the time. And so I stopped working. I got off the tractor, and I discussed with these gentlemen for a half hour or so about the correct process that the district was going to pursue to select the next football coach, and that I would have little to no say in and shouldn't have in that decision, and how that process it worked. And so I think Jason mentioned it, but just educating people on what the actual processes are that occur in school districts and how things happen when they're done the right way, I think is the biggest part of our job, and breaking down those misconceptions of what they think the school board member should do versus what the school board member actually does in the district has been something I've seen over and over in the role. But with a small district like ours, you eventually make contact with the majority of the people in your zone, and so they kind of understand what you're supposed to do and how the processes work. And you don't get as many of those calls the longer you found that to be the case. And it's not because you're pushing them off on somebody else, but you're simply educating them on what the correct process is and steering them back to the district and back to the teacher, principal, superintendent pathway that should always be pursued before bringing something to a board member as a, hey, fix this item.
Definitely great points there. Thank you both for sharing. So as we start to wrap up the conversation a little bit, we'd love for you to help reshape those misconceptions for those who may listen to this podcast and not necessarily understand the whole role of a board member. So how do board members, in your opinion, help shape vision, governance, and accountability within your school district?
So, yeah, I think that the opportunity as a board member to shape that vision is to listen to the people, who you're representing, as you are an elected position. And so listen to the people you're representing, and not just on the, hey, this teacher did, this, or I didn't like that. Those aren't the things that you can get involved with. As Jason's already talked, you can't, if you know too much, you can't vote on things. But hearing them in, man, I really wish we had this program in our district, or the local employers value this skill set. How are we training that in our school district and making our students, ready for what's, life after high school? I think, which is a lot of our goals, right? All of elementary and high school is preparing them for what's next in life. And so getting to hear that feedback and then shape that vision through policies and also just through interest in the district, through championing certain items and being that connector that we've already talked about, to ensure that, not only is the opportunity presented in a board setting and presented to the right leaders of the district, but also that we can take advantage of our positions and go that extra mile and connect them with the right resources that may be in the community or secondary education or excuse me, post-secondary education. And, make sure that we're getting everybody together on the same page that needs to be together, representing the same interest, and ultimately pushing for the betterment or an introduction of a new program or whatever to support our students.
I agree with all that. We're a smaller community. I don't know, Adam, how many are in your district or the city that your school is in, but Yellville has about 1,300 people in it. So it's a really small, really rural town. So everybody you've met at some point probably. Right. And so we try to get the community involved in every single chance we get. We had a former alumni pass away and left a significant amount of money as a donation to the school, earmarked specifically for athletics in general, not just this program or that program. And so we had, it was several $100,000. And so we created a committee to decide how that money would be spent over time. And we made sure that, I can't think off the top of my head, I want to say 3 or 4 just members of the community that sat on that committee also, so that there was never any question about what it was being used for or who was deciding what it was getting spent on, because those community members were more than happy to go back into the community and talk about it as expected. And so everybody kind of knew what was going on. And we do the same thing to an extent with our when we hire personnel. We try to have at least one person from the community, usually a business person, to sit on our hiring committee so that they're also aware of kind of what's going on, who we've been talking to, what questions we're asking. And that can kind of be a rotating group of people. Other than that, the other thing that we like to do, and at least once a year, we try to do a workshop day where we get together somewhere, whether it's at the school. This year, we got together at our superintendent's house, and we invited, of course, the press, but it was the entire board, the superintendent, all three building principals, the athletic director, the curriculum coordinator, and even our football coach came briefly because he wanted to present something. And at those workshop sessions, what we'll do is we've got a list that we've made of short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals that we go over every single year. And short-term may be what do we want to accomplish this year, whether it be with building and grounds, whether it be test scores, whether it be, whatever. What do we want to accomplish in the next 3 years? What do we want to accomplish in the next 10 years? And we've crossed a lot of those off our list, and they have to be achievable goals. We're not looking for pie in the sky, like, oh, well, we're going to build a new campus. Well, no, we're not. We're a small school, so they have to be achievable goals. But the first couple of years, when in my third board meeting, we were going on fiscal distress, so there wasn't money to spend on a lot of stuff. But a can of paint goes a long way. And so, what are your short term? Well, let's make the school look better. Let's get everything looking better. Let's fix this. Let's do that. And it made such a huge difference immediately just in the community's perception of what we were doing. Things started looking up, even though for a while they were extremely difficult.
Those are great points, Jason. I love that idea. Actually, I'm going to steal that if that's okay. I'll steal your homework. I'm going to add to our board and actually make that as a recommendation. I think that's a great thing to do to get that, at least annual planning session together, and of course inviting all the right participants. I think that's critical.
Right. Now let's part of that out. During that, usually a few days before we actually have that workshop session, we'll walk through the whole school. We'll meet each building principal, and they'll walk us through their school, every classroom, the storage facilities, everything. And everybody's got a notepad, and we write stuff down. What do we need to do? What would we like to do? And we do that in the elementary, the middle school, the high school. And that's kind of our starting point for what our goal setting will be.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely great suggestions from both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. So we're actually at the 20-minute mark already. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So we'll just wrap up with the final question of what would you want the public to better understand about board service? You've probably answered it a little bit already, but if you could wrap it up into one brief answer.
I'll start if that's okay. I would just say I would want the public to know that we are there to support the best interests of the students. Like none of us, and if you are, you shouldn't be, but none of us are there on our board, at least with a personal axe to grind. They're there to do what's best, make the decisions that are best to support our staff and students and ensure that, we have success and pave the ways for success. And I think that's critical. And one last thing I would say is, if you get an opportunity, invite somebody to a board meeting, not because they're angry about something or not because they have an agenda item. Invite them to a board meeting so they can see what real board business is and what we actually accomplish on a monthly basis as we have our board meeting. So just come and observe, inform yourself. The more educated the community is, the better off we'll all be. So come out and visit a meeting.
I agree with everything he just said. It is every decision personally, when anything's presented to us, how does this benefit the school? How does it benefit the district? How does it benefit the staff? And especially, how does it benefit the students? Because sometimes something that we think is a great idea may not add any real value to educating kids, which is the whole purpose. And so you got to always kind of weigh that, just because it's a good idea, just because it'd be cool or shiny or maybe make things look good, doesn't always mean that it's the best thing that needs to happen right then. So you got to kind of put on those glasses of student achievement and what's best for them. We're 75% free and reduced. So you always got to think about, are we spending this money properly? Are we helping the students that need help? Are we providing them with the materials they need, not just when they're in our hallways, but when they go home as well? And that's really the big thing for me. And of course, your staff, you've got to take care of your staff because They're literally in the classroom with those kids every single day. I mean, our high school got an A on the report card this year. That doesn't happen by accident. That's a lot of effort. And overall, our school got a B. And that's not an accident. And I spoke with the staff at their Thanksgiving dinner, and, I told them, you should all be extremely proud. This is hard work, and it's not always fun work either. You got to make sure you're giving them the recognition, the support, just kind of across the board to make sure that you're going to be successful now and that you're going to be successful in the future. Because I'm not going to be on this board forever. And I want to make sure whoever comes in isn't coming into a mess, that they're coming into a successful situation that just almost runs itself, hopefully.
Excellent. Y'all made my job easy today. Wonderful input and perspectives.
Right.
Tammy, Shannon, any final thoughts?
I think great conversation. Thank both of you for joining today.
No problem. Anytime.
That wraps up our conversation on the role of a board member. We want to thank Jason and Adam for joining us once again, and we look forward to the next episode. If you have any ideas or suggestions for what you would like to see addressed in our podcast, please reach out. We're here to serve you, and we would love for this podcast to be a resource for our members and the communities they serve. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.